Right, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Great to see you all. I always scan, first of all, for anyone whom I don't recognize and therefore new to us, but I think everybody here I know already. So good to see you. Today we have Sophy Green, who's come along. She really has set up quite a number of charities and is a leading light in many more. But today, she's going to talk about one in particular. She's the CEO of Instant Neighbour. And I think everyone here will be quite familiar with that name. Today, we'll really find out the whole range and extent of their work. So Sophie, welcome to Lively Minds, and over to you.
Thank you very much. It's nice to see you all, and thanks for inviting me along to give you a presentation about Instant Neighbour. And I have to say it's my absolute pleasure to have been the CEO for 17 years at Instant Neighbour, which actually is 36 years old this year, if you weren't aware of that. It started within, I'm going to tell you a bit about me. I'm going to show you a short video. I'll give you some more information about the background of Instant Neighbour, what we do at the charity, what the impact of the last year has been on us, because I think most people want to hear about that, but also our plans for the future. And I'm happy to take questions at the end, or if there's something you want to interrupt me on at any point, please do. Can you all hear me okay? Yeah. Yeah. So I've started point, just to make sure that I check that. Okay, so just to let you know that we're just having this long conversation about Aberdeen. I'm an Aberdonian born and bred and have spent most of my life living in Aberdeen. I am married with 3 daughters. I have a granddaughter and 2 grandsons. I am passionate about the northeast of Scotland, and I think I've spent almost all of my career working to create a better life for the citizens of Aberdeen and the surrounding area. So I'm quite passionate about what we do and how we work as an organisation. It's always an interesting thing to be asked to talk about Instant Neighbour, because one of the things it does, it makes you pause for a bit and think about your organisation. You don't often get the chance to do that, but I'll speak a bit more about that going forward over this last year, because I think that was a big opportunity as well. It would be quite easy to spend the whole of this time talking about our challenges, because let's face it, we have a lot, but don't many charitable organisations. But I wanted to tell you a bit more about the positive impact we've had. And as a starting point, I want to show you a short video that we've recently recorded. And with technology working, one hopes that this is going to work properly. So bear with me, everybody. And I'm hoping the sound etc. works for you all too.
Instant Neighbour has been supporting people in Aberdeen and the Shire for the last 36 years, when we started providing food parcels from Holborn West Church. Since then, to provide an income for the organisation and to further support the people of Aberdeen, we have started doing other activities. Our aim is to make Aberdeen poverty-free. Through our shops, we sell low-cost, good quality reused furniture, white goods, clothing and bric-a-brac. By receiving these donations, we are diverting items from landfill and providing access to items to those on low incomes, although everyone is welcome to shop in our shops. Our social enterprises, Carpeting and Joiner Inc., provide professional services competitively priced for everyone. Offering employability to people furthest from the job market is hugely important to the organisation. We provide a safe learning environment for people to build confidence, learn a new skill, therefore be better prepared to seek permanent employment.
Right, stop sharing that. Great, thanks. I hope that was useful for you. It gives you a bit of an insight into the work we've done. And I have to say that that's very recently recorded, and literally within the past 3 or 4 weeks. So I hope it's okay. I did look at it beforehand. You'll have seen for that part of what we're doing is we're focusing our energy on our charitable activities, and our 2 charitable activities are, in the main, our food bank and also the Giving Tree. And they are financially supported by our retail outlets, the 2 shops that we have, and our carpet service and our joinery service. I don't know how many of you know about the fact that you can get a carpet from Instant Neighbour. You can get a brand new carpet. Any carpet you find that you like the sample of, we can find for you. And we have carpet fitters that can come and lay it in your house. We are doing that at very low cost, the lowest we can possibly make it, to ensure that people who are in low income get their houses made as comfortable as possible. And alongside that, we have our own joinery service, Joiner Inc. So we have a joiner, Sergey, who has worked with us now, started to be with me about 9 years. who's a fantastic guy and will do anything from fit a cat flap on a door, put a shelf up for you. He's fitted our kitchen for us. He's done decking for people, etc. He's put up garden gates. You name it, he can do it. So again, it's a low cost, good quality professional joinery service, which I have to say is getting busier and busier and busier. So our hope and anticipation is that we might be able to get an apprentice to work alongside Sergey at some point as well. You'll have heard at the end of that video that one of the things that we're keenest on is our employability and skills development, and that's key in all that we do. We want to help people move out of relying on benefits in the main. And we're very proud of the fact that in our current team of 19 people, 13 have come from within our client group. It can take a lot of time, as you can imagine, for individuals to become ready to move into employment, and we work with them at their pace. We have a number of different volunteers, and of course this last year has been a bit difficult for them, and in part what we've tried to do is keep in touch with them and bring them back whenever we can. Prior to the pandemic, to give you a bit of a picture of that, because the last year has, we've changed quite a bit of how we've operated, and we'll probably be retaining some of those changes as we go forward. But prior to the pandemic, the retail world had been changing, as most of you will have known. I think it's accelerated in the last year in that we became aware. We had 4 shops prior to the pandemic, we're down to 2 now. And people's shopping habits had already started to change. We decided not to renew the lease in one of our shops, and then we were trying to secure a tenant for another one of our shops. That was the shop in Cooter we were trying to secure a tenant for. And we had decided to move online, to have an online shop, and we were developing that alongside doing some sort of rebranding for us. So 2019 actually had been a financially challenging year for Instant Neighbour. So we were going into a challenging time when the pandemic hit. So give you an idea of who we work with. You'll probably be unsurprised to hear that most of our clients are long-term unemployed, young people in the main with low educational attainment, not NEET, which is not in education, employment or training, recent immigrants and single parents. And a lot of them are homeless or at risk of becoming homeless. And quite often they have mental health issues or are grappling with addiction. We find that one of the hardest things to cope with actually in terms of those people who come to us. They're quite often experiencing hardship because of prolonged dependence on benefits. Many of them are repeat users and come to us on a fairly regular basis, in particular for food parcels or other assistance. And we try very hard to help them out of that. We support the development of the clients and our volunteers, and we work alongside, I'll just give you a few of the organisations we work with, but we work with Bernardo's, Skills Development Scotland, Pathways, North East Scotland Sensory Services, the Foyer, Cornhill Hospital, the Job Centre Plus, Inspire, Cornerstone, Sam H, Shaw Trust, SHMU, Momentum, and we offer people who have got community service orders the opportunity to come and work out their hours at Instant Neighbour as well. We also work with local schools, having just had a conversation with Alan about Skene Square Primary School. But we work with Aberdeen Grammar School, Robert Gordon's, Bridge of Dawn, Bucksburn, Cults Academy, Harlaw, West Hill, Hazelhead, I can keep going, and we also work with the North East Scotland College and both universities. The relationship with the schools in particular is round about their youth philanthropy initiatives, which is through the Wood Foundation. I don't know if any of you have come across that. The young folk there are encouraged to identify a local social enterprise or charity and find out about it, make a presentation about that, and can win the charity £3,000. So we've been very fortunate that both Hazelhead Academy and St Macher have done it for us twice actually in the last few years, and Hazelhead have done it for us as well, which is great. And the college, we offer, again, placements through the college to people coming to us, and also the other way around too. And the universities, we have connections with some of the research students. We've done work with people who are doing their marketing courses, etc. So we try to connect as best we can across the whole of the North East. So the picture of what Instant Neighbour does and our opportunities are pretty broad. We've recently begun to offer placements through the Kickstart programme. I don't know if any of you have heard of the Kickstart. It is a fairly recent government funded initiative to help 16 to 24-year-olds get work experience. So we are funded to offer places to, at the moment we have 2 young people with us through Kickstart. both working in the shops to gain some retail experience. We are paid by the government in order to take them on. So it helps us help them, if that makes sense. So there's, it works both ways around. Obviously, we work with general public and oil and gas companies, private companies, etc. And both large and small people from both the private and public sector. I'll talk a little bit about the food bank now, because I imagine for most of you, you know that in more depth than the other stuff that Instant Neighbour does. But the food bank, we have a poster in the food bank called Community Connector. And our Community Connector helps our people that come to the food bank navigate the benefit system. I don't know, I don't imagine any of you have really had to proactively get involved with the benefit system at all, certainly not in the recent past, but there's been fairly major changes to how you access it in the last 3 or 4 years. It used to be that you would go along and you would get assistance to fill in forms to go through the process of applying for benefits. They've stopped that assistance now. You have to be proactive. You have to go online and fill in a form. You have to answer all the questions they ask. A lot of people that come to us, you'll be unsurprised to hear, struggle with doing that. Apart from anything else, they don't have access to the online system. The form takes about 40 to 50 minutes to fill in, and through the public library service, you get free online access for 35 minutes. So you don't even get enough time through the free system to complete a form. So we have in the office access to computers, and our Community Connector help people fill in those forms. Part of it is for him to help them. He does budgeting advice with them and support them. He tries to help them minimize their debt, because another thing, if you have a lot of debt, you get less benefit, which seems a bit bizarre in some ways, isn't it? So if you have loads of debt, you get less benefit. So trying to help people navigate that is one of the main tasks that our Community Connector does. It's trying to help people build their financial capability. I think one of the weaknesses we have in our education system is we don't spend enough time or energy on helping people understand money, how it works, how you can go shopping, how you can do any of that. And if you're not in a secure family or a loving family environment who somebody's teaching you all of that, then it makes it very difficult for you to start off the world of where you can actually get into that. We are helping people to try and not ignore their financial situation, because a lot of people, you know, the brown envelope comes through the door, still happens, and they just ignore it completely. So they can end up in all sorts of financial challenges because they've buried their head in the sand. So we're trying to get them to build a relationship with them and round about trust, so that they will open up to us. And Evan, who's a Community Connector, can then help them move through and access some of the benefits they might not be aware of. So we're giving them, once we get to know them a bit better, we offer them the volunteering opportunities that I mentioned previously, and they can participate with new groups outside. We try and find out what's going on through other volunteer organisations. And so we're helping people build up their assertiveness, because one of the things when you're dealing with a local authority is good to be able to be assertive but not aggressive, to get your point across. So we help people develop that and help them develop their work skills. And obviously the work at the food bank makes a huge difference. I recently applied to one of the Aberdeen food funds during the pandemic for some support for the food bank. So we now have a 6-month part-time funded post to work alongside Evan to try and help get through some of the backlog of people that have built up during the pandemic, so he can now, because obviously, and he hasn't been allowed to meet face-to-face with people in you know, when they come to we've had to keep the door shut, so to speak, but we've kept the food bank open during the pandemic, so people have somewhere that they can come to. And for a lot of people, it was their only social interaction that they had throughout the whole of the last year. So we're now getting ready to be able to offer face-to-face meetings again. So Evan now has an assistant who will be at the front door meeting people, set up appointments with them so they can come and speak to him. So I wanted to speak a little bit about the impact of COVID on Instant Neighbour. I think it was, for me as the leader of the organisation, quite an interesting learning experience, because it's been such a fragile situation all the time and ever changing. One of the things I've had to learn is how to adapt very quickly, how to reassure people that they are safe, the jobs are safe, and that they can continue working in a way that is safe. So that's been quite an interesting experience for myself. And also then trying to lead by example by doing things like, for instance, working from home, which I'm still doing, but making sure that the charity still runs effectively. So obviously in early March last year, we all became aware, as we didn't read that, about this virus that was emanating from China. I brought the team together, I think it was about the 17th of March last year, because every Tuesday morning we normally have a full all staff meeting, and we spoke as a team about what might be coming. And then on the 23rd of March, you'll all remember, we got that announcement that everything had to close. I don't work on a Monday, and that was a Monday. So I look after my grandchildren on a Monday. And I had to stop looking after my grandchildren fairly briefly for a couple of hours to try and ensure that we got everything sorted at work. So it was quite an interesting day, I think, for everybody. We had, as I say, spoken about it the week before and what the impact might be, but we had to, at that point, I had to close everything down. And it was unclear what was going to happen next for everybody. We knew that the city were in the process of pulling together all of the food bank organisations to try and help us work more collaboratively across it to make sure that anybody who was in food poverty was looked after during that time. So that's part of what we knew we were going to keep doing. We knew we were going to keep the food bank open, in part for our own client base as well. So we did that. On the 27th of March, the government announced the Furlough Scheme, which was a huge relief to me, to be honest with you, because of the 19 members of staff, I had kept a team of 7 working, the rest were furloughed. If I hadn't had the support from the government, they would have all had to be paid off, to be honest with you. So the Furlough Scheme for us was an absolute godsend. It was quite an interesting decision-making process about who to keep at work and actually physically at work. So we have a contract with Aberdeen City Council to provide removal service and storage service for the goods and furniture for people who are evicted from the properties. We've been doing that for over 20 years. And that service continued throughout the whole of the pandemic. Despite the city saying they weren't going to evict anybody, they did. They also did spend a bit of time ensuring people who were in temporary accommodation were shifted into more permanent accommodation. So we were involved in that. So the 2 guys in the van, I kept 2 of them on. We have a team of 6 people that work in vans, so I kept 2 of them on. The food bank, I kept obviously Community Connector working, our office manager and our warehouse manager. The office manager often helps with the food bank as well. And the warehouse manager, because the food is stored and comes into the warehouse, we kept her. So I had this team of people physically working. I started working from home, and our accounts manager started working from home as well. So we could keep on top of what was happening financially. So that was quite an interesting one. But the rest of my team don't have access to Zoom and don't have access to things like Teams and all that kind of stuff. So we set up an Instant Neighbour WhatsApp group. I don't know if any of you use WhatsApp. But I did a weekly video for everybody on the team so we could keep in touch with them. And there was chat that took place through that. So everybody that was home was kept up to speed with what was happening. The other thing that was quite interesting, in order to be on the furlough scheme, you have to have a written agreement from everybody. So I had to do that on 3 separate occasions when we were furloughing people to keep things legal. There's a whole bunch of stuff that happens in the background that I think most people are not aware of when you're doing all of this kind of stuff. And obviously what still remains key to us is keeping everybody safe and keeping so the team that were working in the office wanted to keep this bubble there. So they didn't want me going anywhere near it and didn't want anybody else going anywhere near it. So they had this bubble, they had a specific way of working, the flow through the building, the signs, all that kind of stuff. And obviously we're still having to do that, although I have more people back at work and the shops are reopened. So that's been quite an interesting process for us in bringing people back in and still keeping them safe, while still, as I say, demonstrating leadership by working from home, because that's what we're still being told to do. So it's quite an interesting one for me. I will be in the office on Thursday, so I am going in maybe 1 day a week now, or 1.5 days a week, because I think my visibility is important, but it's an interesting challenge. One of the things that we wanted to explain to you about the food bank was we had quite a wider client base during the pandemic, which remains. So we've had people who have never had to access a food bank coming to us. Because they had, some people were not furloughed, but were just immediately laid off. So the crisis had a significant effect on a lot of people in terms of their well-being. We had people with no permanent address, who actually, one of the biggest challenges the team have faced is keeping people up to speed with what's happening. A lot of people who are from our client group don't watch the news. are really not that interested in everything. So reminding them about and actually giving them face masks, hand sanitization type stuff, reminding them how they have to behave, what they should be doing, that kind of stuff. So we've been doing that. We saw clients we haven't seen for the past 1 to 3 years because they've become vulnerable again. People who are on 0 hours contracts who suddenly discovered they had no work at all. We had international students, those who were undertaking masters whose funding was delayed because their embassies were shut and they were trapped here because they couldn't travel. And a lot of them experienced loneliness and isolation because most of the UK students at that point returned home. So suddenly you had a bunch of people who were here with no access to their any funding, etc. So we worked with those. And as I say, people with 0 hours contracts. At the beginning of the pandemic, it was quite easy for us to keep enough food. Again, you'll be unsurprised to hear cafes, restaurants, etc. that closed. We got all of the stuff to us. Well, it was shared amongst the various food banks. And obviously, folk like yourselves from the churches, the support has been absolutely key. And you guys have always been fantastic stepping up to the mark. So thank you all for that. The boxes outside the Queen's Cross Church were amazingly helpful to us. So I'm very grateful to everyone doing that. During the pandemic, just to say, we were also served notice on our Union Square shop. We knew that was likely to happen because we had been given some advance notice, but we were told we had to be out by the 23rd of June last year. And of course, you can imagine, as I had so little people working, that caused all sorts of challenges for us as an organisation to get ourselves out in a safe way, because at that point you still were being told to stay away from folk, etc. So that was a real challenge. And obviously one of the things I was concerned about was the lack of income from our shops, because that obviously caused us all sorts of worry. One of the things that the Scottish Government did really well for the third sector was launch a whole bunch of funding schemes, which I spent all of my time writing funding applications for last year, and we were pretty successful, to be honest with you. I think in part because we were doing the right thing. We have been feeding people for 36 years. It's not new to us as an organisation, so we could immediately switch into doing it in a slightly different way. And we covered the north of the city through the Feed the City campaign. We're still involved with all of that. Then we had the thoughts about reopening the shops and how to do that safely. As you can imagine, we had, at the beginning of when things were being eased off, you were told you had to quarantine all your goods for 72 hours. So you weren't allowed to touch anything. So that caused, as you can imagine, all sorts of challenges for us in terms of space. So something that arrives on a Monday, you can't touch it until the Wednesday. So what do you do with it between Monday and Wednesday? So we had to figure that out. Relatively quickly, they changed that within about, I think it was about 4 or 5 weeks, they changed their mind on the quarantining. So that actually was quite helpful, but it had a significant impact. The costs of reopening have been significant. You'll know that from the church. There's signage, there's putting stuff around your tills, all of that kind of stuff, the hand washing screens, and then who to bring back, which volunteers, when, all of that kind of stuff. One of the landlord who we had decided not to renegotiate the lease on came to us and asked us to stay. So we went from paying a lease of £15,000 a year to peppercorn. So we are staying there. And for those of you who are clever, you'll have worked out which shop that might be. But it's been very useful. We actually then negotiated the lease for another unit at Union Square. We moved into that and then got it ready for opening, and then got asked to move out again. So we never actually got that particular unit open. We then were offered another unit, which we moved into and had anticipated having that open before Christmas, but of course then just after Christmas, we'd say, but then what happened, we got the lockdown again. So that lease was due to run for 6 months with the intention of it lasting for longer from Union Square. They thought it would be at least another year to 2 years. We got less than 6 months in that unit and have just had to move out of that again. You'll be unsurprised to hear that we've decided not to take on another unit at Union Square in the immediate short term, not that there are any available. But for those of you who are interested in this, you might be delighted to know that it's Hamleys that are going into the unit we were in before, the toy shop from London. So, which is fantastic news, I think, for the city, because it is we knew it was somebody that wasn't in the city already that was coming in. So anything that's positive for the city, I think, is great. So that was a bit of a challenge. We don't see any diminishment in demand at the food bank going forward. We have not seen any drop in numbers of people coming to us. In 2020, our Community Connector assisted 2,500 food bank clients. Over 1,500 of them were new to us, completely new to us. And they gave out just nearly 11,500 food parcels. In 2019, we had given out 5,500 food parcels to 1,500 people, just to give you an indication of the sudden change. It doubled in demand. He helped our food bank clients achieve an additional £100,000 of universal credit payments, £65,000 of personal independence payments, £40,000 in winter worth payments, and saved people about £10,500 by reducing their debt payments. So the role of the community connector cannot be underestimated in terms of working with the food bank people. It's really, really important for those living in poverty. To date, I got this figure as of last Friday, we'd given out in 2021, 5,442 food parcels with another 384 new clients registering with us. So we do not see the numbers slowing. And the fact that Furlough Scheme has not yet ended gives us a bit of cause for concern that the figures might go up. The unemployment rate in Aberdeen has gone from 2.1% to 14% in the last year and a half. So that's quite a stark figure for everybody. And the impact of that is likely to be pretty vast, not just on us, but on all other sort of services you can imagine. Sorry, I did say about not being negative. So my apologies that some of this stuff is a bit negative. One of the things we've learned is that working collaboratively has been a really useful thing. We have developed really positive relationships across other organisations across the city. The Feed the City campaign has been fantastic. And we are pleased to be working that way and want to carry on with that. I said earlier about one of the things that you don't have time to do quite often is pause when you're running an organisation at all and take a step away and think about it. One of the things that the pandemic has allowed us to do is exactly that, is to take a step away because we've not been running everything all the time, although we've been trying to manage other bits and pieces. Before the pandemic had started, we had applied for support through the Brand for Growth programme. I don't know if you've heard of that. Again, that's another Scottish Government programme which is run by a social enterprise called Bold. And we were looking to refresh our branding. We hadn't done anything with that for a long time. So we'd had a meeting with the board and the staff in mid-February last year to consider what our brand means to us. And I'm just going to show you some of the logos. So I'm going to show you our old logo and our newer ones. So hopefully this works. A calendar. Can you see that? Can you see that? Yeah, that's this one here is the old logo, Instant Neighbour. We were fond of that, but we felt that it required a bit of an update and a bit of a refresh. One of the challenges we faced is that people still to this day, after 36 years, we don't really know what we do. So we then have had these. Go. No. I need to try and see if I can get it to do it. There you go. Get rid of that. I can get. No. Sorry, I'm trying to get the screens to go away. Slideshow, it's that one, isn't it? Slides there. I don't know if that's helpful. So this is the new logo here, and you can see it's basically a house. I hope you can see that. And what we've done with the various different bits of our services is to use sections of it. So this is a plate with food on it. It's supposed to be a sausage, etc. So that's out of the food bag. Home Comforts is our shops. So this is the front door of somebody's house. And you can't really see the services because I'm in the way, but this is our home services side of stuff. So we're the guys, the joinery and the carpet service too. That's one of our new services. And we have this new one drawn up for the Giving Tree. So just to give you an idea of the kind of stuff that we've been doing. So whilst we have, get rid of that, whilst we have been not running all the services all the time, we have been doing other bits and pieces in the background. The other thing we've looked at is our website. It's about to be relaunched at the end of July with the new logos, etc. One of the things that had happened to our website, which I think happens to quite a lot of people's websites, is that you end up adding stuff to it because you just do different bits and pieces. You think, well, just out there, or just create a page for it and all this. But so we felt it was become quite clumsy and lazy and not easy to navigate around. So it's been refreshed. So we've been working away at that in the background as well. But I'm very proud of what we've done in terms of the rebranding. I think it was great. It's refreshed. All of our vans have been rebranded. The shop's been rebranded. The reason you might have noticed the Great Western Road shop, Mrs. Patterson, I'm sorry, I don't know your first name, is because of the bright pink new sign. So the home services sign, the signage is brighter, it's more bold, it's more vibrant, it's more up to date from what we understand in terms across the world. So I'm hoping that helps people notice us even more. So as I say, everything's been rebranded now, and the website is going to be launched fairly soon too. We've also, as I said at the beginning of this, had been aware that people's retail habits had been changing. So we had been developing an online shop. You're allowed when you're furloughed to undertake training. So one of my colleagues that was furloughed undertook training to how to run and manage the online shop. And we actually launched that in March of this year. And I'll see if I can share that one with you. I've got just a slide that shows the front of the shop. I'll do that. So that's the logo, the link there, Home Comforts and Neighbour. And there's an online shop now, which was launched in March, which is doing pretty well. We applied to Adapt and Thrive to help us develop this further. So we have, in July of this month, employed an online marketing officer for the shop, helped by an administration assistant. I haven't made this live, by the way, that's just a screenshot of the front page. But you can buy everything on there. And one of the things we have been conscious of as a charity is that we have a new generation coming through who don't necessarily know about Instant Neighbour particularly. And what we've been keen to do is trying to find a way to connect with them. So part of the reason for launching the online shop is that, but also this last year, as we all know, we've not been able to go to the shops in the same way. So we wanted to be able to find a way that people could still purchase from us if they were required to remain at home, and obviously trying to future-proof if we ever have to be locked down again. Please not, but because we really don't want that. But that is up there, and it's, as I say, doing really well. And I have to say, it's been quite an interesting journey getting an online shop. One of the concerns we've had about it has been, as you can imagine, around about our employment and skills development side of stuff, because that's what we do as an organisation. We help people learn a skill and develop something. So we've had to think long and hard about how we can still do that with an online shop. So we have in our warehouse set up, not the warehouse that's at Matter Drive, we have another warehouse out at Echt. We have set up within there a setup for taking photographs of the goods. And so we are making up room sets. So we're going to develop the online shop to provide you with a whole living room set, for instance, or a kitchen or something like that. So there, people are going to get the skills in that. We're also going to do digital development skills for people as well, so they can learn how to manage the online shop. And also we still require people in the van. So we have taken another van driver and van hand as well, because the online shop is picking up, and that's obviously direct delivery to people's houses rather than coming into, although it could be, the bits and pieces can be collected from there. So you can see we've been doing a lot. I'd like you to visit the online shop, please. I'd be delighted to get everybody's feedback on it, see if there's anything you think that we could change in it, etc., and develop. Before I finish, I just want to talk briefly about our giving tree, which is we've been running. It's actually going into its 31st year, and that runs at Christmas time. The Giving Tree Appeal. We get the names and ages of children from across the north of Scotland who wouldn't get much at Christmas time. Historically, we've put their names and ages onto a gift tag, hang those gift tags as you've seen on Christmas trees, because you guys at Queen's Cross always have at least one of the trees, which is fantastic. People take the gift tags away and then buy a gift and give it back to us. We sort them and make sure that all of the gifts go out to the family centres, community centres, criminal justice social work teams, all of that kind of environment, the week before they close, which is like 2 weeks before Christmas, if that makes sense. So then they make sure they go out to the young people. You'll be unsurprised to hear that last year's Giving Tree was slightly different in that the COVID made it, people were working from home. So a large number of the organisations, big offices, etc., that we would normally have gifts from were not there. So we had to find a different way to work with them, which made the whole process of the Giving Tree far more complicated than we had anticipated. And we were still being told to quarantine stuff at that point, the gifts, which struck us all, to be honest with you, a bit odd, because you can go into a supermarket or wherever, buy a toy for one of your kids and take it home and give it to them. but you weren't allowed to buy a toy, give it to us so we could pass it on, which struck us all as being a bit odd, but some of the COVID rules have been a little bit strange and difficult to sort of comprehend at times, haven't they? So anyway, we found a way around that, and we managed to give out nearly 11,000 Christmas presents to kids last year. It was a far more difficult campaign than we've ever run before because of all the challenges of COVID. But we're very proud that we managed to do that, and thank you to everyone that supported that. It's been really interesting. We managed to get space for it, again, through Aberdeen City Council. That's the second year they've allowed us to use what was Frederick Street Primary School, which is across the road from the health centre there. That's been a great space, to be honest with you. Here's fingers crossed they don't manage to sell it this year, selfishly, so we could run it from there again. So it's been a really interesting one. And again, you might be unsurprised to hear that as of the schools going back, we'll be starting planning our Giving Tree again for this year. It takes up quite a large part of time, and we dedicate almost 6 weeks full time to the Giving Tree when it's actually running. So they have a far more limited service, which some people get a bit annoyed about during that time, but it's one of our key pieces of work. That, alongside the food bank, are the major pieces of work. In the 36 years of Instant Neighbour, we've helped over 300,000 people, which is quite an astonishing figure. I think one of my sadnesses has to be that after 17 years, I'm still here. I had this sort of naive idea that I would work myself out of a job because poverty would be eradicated and we'd have the world all sorted, people have houses and all that kind of stuff. And clearly that's not been the case. And if anything, we've had to grow. It's interesting for me because, again, a reflection is that as an organisation, we don't want to grow into this huge organisation. There's been all sorts of temptations over the years to go off and do stuff and try and develop here, there and everywhere, replication and all that. But actually what we've been passionate about, and the boards remain that way, is to focus on the local community as best we can, not be pulled into doing all this other stuff. We do work across the whole of Aberdeen City and Aberdeen Shire as best we can. So we're trying to sort of focus our energy in and keep working well, and not on a huge scale, but doing really positive work on a relatively small scale. So Instant Neighbour is about trying to make Aberdeen poverty-free, which would be fantastic. I think it's unrealistic, but and we do that through the provision of good quality, reasonable priced goods that help people set up and maintain a home. We offer employability skills and development opportunities. Volunteering, I have a case study if anybody's interested in the volunteering side of stuff. Feeding people and making sure people have a great Christmas. I want to thank all of you at Queen's Cross Church for all your ongoing support. It's been fantastic. We've had a long-term relationship with yourselves, and I hope that continues. It's been my pleasure to have been involved for a long time, and I'm on the lettings committees. Not there's been much letting going on in the last year and a bit, but I've been actively involved in that side of stuff. I have to say that one of the things for me I'm incredibly grateful to is my amazing team. I have a fantastic team at Instant Neighbour. They have been so agile in this last year, not just this last year, they always are. They've adapted to an ever-changing scene that seems to sort of never stand still, doesn't it? I mean, 1 minute we're hearing one thing, the next minute another. And they've kept people fed, have managed everything with absolutely great sense of humour, I think, most of the time, which is something which I think you have to have when you're working in this and living in this environment. And they have, I think, have no doubt, have actually helped save people's lives in this last year, without a doubt, shadow of a doubt. So not just this last year, for the past 36 years. So thank you. Hope that was okay. And it's a rush through, to be honest with you. Instant Neighbour does a lot, and it's like, how do you gather it all together and keep it sort of sensible? I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, first of all, Sophie, thank you very much. That was actually incredibly comprehensive, and I'm sure people have comments and perhaps questions for you about the range of your work. Who? It's over to you. Alan, on you go.
Need to unmute.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Alan.
The food bank, clients referred, but what do you give food parcels to people who drop by who are desperately in need?
We don't take any referrals, actually. We do, that's not true. We take some referrals, but ours is purely a drop-in food bank. So anybody can come to us. There's no restriction. They get asked a series of questions when they do come to us, obviously, about what their situation is, etc. And we have a food bank database, and it's pretty comprehensive, running that now for about well, all the time I've been there, but before that, maybe about 20 years. And you can come to us every 14 days for a food parcel.
Thank you.
Yes, Ron, on you go.
Hi. My head's buzzing. There's been so much information, but and some of it quite shocking. But I may have got this wrong. Did you, a few years ago, try and set up a food kitchen where you taught people how to cook meals and whatever?
No, that's not us. That's CFINE, Community Food Initiative Northeast. They have a kitchen down in Poyernook Road, where we used to be.
Is it still working, or did it presumably had to close during the...
It had to close, but what they have been doing is meal preparation within their kitchen from food that was donated to them and been giving it out as meals. So they have been doing that. I think their intention is to go back when they're able to offer in exactly what you were referring to. But no, we've not done that. We've not had, to be honest, we've not had anywhere we could do it from. We have spoken in the past to the local authority about using schools' kitchens, etc., in the holidays, but they do deep cleans and that kind of stuff then, so they weren't keen.
Thank you.
It's quite an interesting one, actually. Was our food bank is not regarded as being part of definitions of food banks. So we're an emergency food bank. The idea is you come to us if in an emergency situation. We are not a feeder, which is what the other food banks refer to. A feeder is one that actually gives out prepared meals and has a kitchen. So for instance, City of Love and the Fountain Church, all that kind of stuff, have evenings where you can go along, or Cyrenians do a Sunday lunch type stuff. We've never been involved in that. It's always been emergency food parcels. Although if somebody gives us prepared meals, obviously we hand them out. I realise I did bombard you all with lots and lots of stuff. Instant Neighbour does a lot, and I think one of our challenges has been, as I was saying, to try and get that message across about how much we actually do. You know, there's a couple of other pieces of work that we do that I have not detailed, because I thought, how do you keep it so it's sort of understandable for everybody in a relatively short period of time. But you'd be very welcome at any time to come when it's safer. It's not unsafe at the moment, but safer, and spend a bit of time with us, understanding where we, as an organisation, are involved across so many parts of the Northeast, and are actively involved in trying to influence stuff at a Scottish Government level as well. It's part of what I do. I'm the chair of SENSCOT, the Social Entrepreneurs Network Scotland, and I'm also on the board of Community Resources Network Scotland as well. So trying to sort of keep Aberdeen up there in terms of people's thinking, because I think the North East of Scotland can get forgotten quite a lot, because the Central Belt obviously pulls all of the, has far more population clearly, but pulls a lot more power into that area. So I'm trying to keep the North East in their minds.
Mike, on you go.
Yes, thank you. Sophie, your website produces a list of required goods. And I know, you know, inverted commas and that. Are you finding that you're getting sufficient of that core essentials, or are you getting things that you say, I really can't use this because the recipients, you know, don't have the mechanism to process it? Or
are you talking about food, Mike, or are you talking about food?
Yeah.
Sorry, food. Yeah. To be honest with you, it's been a really interesting one in the recent past. We have a mixture of both of those. We get some stuff which some people wouldn't know how to work with. So we have, through our connections, got some recipes for people. So if we get, I don't know, broth mix, for instance, a lot of people don't have a clue what to do with broth mix, or how to work with lentils and that kind of stuff. So we'll try to put a pack together which gives them that. So yes, we do, but we've had, it's quite interesting again, we've had quite a number of Polish products in the recent past again, which we do get Polish, obviously, food bank clients, but we as an organisation need to understand what they are, which is not always the easiest. So we have, one of my guys is actually, he's Belarusian, but he's helpful in terms of understanding some of the Polish side stuff. So we have, and we ask the food bank clients to come in who are Polish what things are, so we have a bit of an idea. So, but in the last 6 months, because of what's happened with Brexit, you don't want to go into that world, well, there has been shortages of things like beans, which is bizarre, tinned tomatoes, have been shorter in supply. You guys that go into shops, you'll have known in the last year or so, there's some stuff you go into and you think, whoa. An example would be, it's a very silly one in some ways, but my husband makes yogurt for me, and trying to get dried skim milk powder for a long time was almost impossible. So, but coming to the food bank side of stuff, yes, that's been a difficult one. We have very recently coordinated with an organisation called Face Donate, and they are matching up donors to food banks. So they've managed to give us money now through some of their donors to provide fresh milk. So we're buying in fresh milk now, because that was a huge challenge for us. People always wanted milk and we didn't have any fresh milk that had long life. So the basics are always, for me, the list that we have are the things that are the core stuff. So anything we can get is core. Warburtons are pretty good now because they're giving us bread. And there's a new bakery just opened just along the road from us, opposite Kitty Brewster's school. They're starting to give us their end of day product type stuff as well. A large part of it is relationship development, to be honest with you, Mike, and people's tastes change. You know, it's quite interesting, isn't it? You know, but the Frey Bentus tin pies, your tuna, your baked beans, your tomatoes, soups, cereals, all that kind of stuff. Absolutely, we always need. So yeah. Yeah, I think it's if everybody thinks about what a basic breakfast, lunch, dinner is for them at home, making it out of non-ambient products, then. But then, yeah, one of the things that's quite interesting for me, we've had, which I don't think our client group need particularly, are low-fat products. A lot of them need sustenance.
Thank you.
Back to Alan.
Sophie, I know it's not a competition, but do you feel that Instant Neighbour gets the recognition and credit it deserves? I don't see the paper every day, but CFINE seems to get a lot of press coverage. Do you feel that your efforts are being recognised or appreciated by the media, for example?
Well, I think one of the differences is the size of the organisation. CFINE has grown a lot in the last year, and I think to give them credit, they are in this last year and a half, when they have been one of the coordinating bodies around about the food provision. So when it comes to food provision, we work in partnership with them. They have more capacity in terms of people to get media stories out there. One of the things our online marketing officer we're looking at is our social media side of stuff as well. It's not come to me. The recognition thing is an interesting one, because I suppose there's an element for me of, there's a balance between the highlighting the amount of poverty there is in the city from a positive perspective, if that makes sense, because what you want to do is people who are living in that environment, I don't want to pull them down, you want to pull them up. So it's how do you do that through the media? And that for me is always the challenge. It's getting the story right. So I think the numbers, the shocking side of stuff that CFINE does, and we feed into the numbers that they give out. So we, you know, in terms of numbers of food processors, etc., that are given out across the city, they're getting some of those numbers from us. So as you say, it's not competition. So I suppose the challenge I have for Instant Neighbour is the breadth of what we do, because we're not just the food bank, we're not just the Giving Tree, we're an environmental organisation. We're a skills development organisation. CFINE are as well for skills development, because they give lots of skills opportunity. And we work closely with the city on the contracts we have with them. So it's not for me, it's the balance between getting, how do you use poverty as a positive story? And how do we, for me, if your aim is to make Aberdeen a poverty-free place, how do you do that without wagging fingers at how bad they are at giving money to, or, you know what I mean? So it's a difficult one, but I appreciate the question, because it is one we do talk about and think about at work, about should we be shouting more? Should we be seeking more recognition? I think for us, a lot of the time is working quietly away in the background and helping people move on is as important. And for me, as I was saying earlier on, we've been pretty successful in terms of funding applications this last year or so. So our recognition comes from that to a certain extent. The fact that we're still here 36 years on. We have a bit of money in the bank at the moment for the first time in a long time. but we have no idea what the next 18 months to 2 years are going to be like. None of us do, truthfully, do we? In terms of what the retail world will be, which is part of where our income comes from. What's going to happen in Aberdeen as a city once the furlough goes away, once companies go back to work, because most of them are still working from home. And I know from my eldest 2 daughters work in oil and gas, and I know that there's been reduction, and I don't think they're finished at that with oil and gas. They're sort of reinventing what they're doing, etc. So I think the city as a whole has a bit of a challenge going forward. And I think that Instant Neighbour has been in the background of that for a long time. If we are asked, which we aren't very often, to be honest, by the local authority to comment, we comment. We give them our view of how they could change. There's been the recent stuff, I don't know if any of you commented about the city centre planning, etc. I have very real concerns about, as have most, I think, do. What does Aberdeen look like now as a city? So I don't want to knock it more, if that makes sense, because I think that's happening anyway. But for me, it is that, yeah, going back to my thing, how do you talk positively about poverty? I don't know if that answers, Alan. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.
I've got one question for you, Sophie.
Sure.
You know, I'm often out on the street with young people.
Yes.
And I don't actually like standing about waiting for too long for the group to arrive. I have to sometimes. So if I'm in the Castlegate, I'll go to the market bookshop window, onto Bose's window, Barnard's window, and so on. But often I'm sort of waiting there. I'm approached by quite a number of people, actually, requiring help. I direct them to the local authority, which is around the corner on Broad Street. That's still the most appropriate thing to do.
Yeah, my view on that one is absolutely. It depends what the help they're asking for. We advise people not to give anybody any money. I wouldn't give somebody cash. I might offer to buy them a cup of coffee or a sandwich or something like that. But yes, direct them to Broad Street. Yeah, the customer services bit there is exactly the right place to, particularly if you're there, because they're literally around the corner. I think if you're anywhere else, if you know of any other charitable organisation, and I see that Sirens have launched a street service, a non-street service, and there's an organisation in Edinburgh called Streetworks that do that. And so I think the intention is to have people out in the street trying to connect with folk that are sitting in shops or anything like that, or wandering around. Part of the challenge nowadays is, because I've been approached in this last 7 or 8 months for when I've been out and about walking and that kind of stuff for money from people. Most people don't carry cash anymore. You know, that's one of the other challenges we all face as a society, that we're becoming cashless. So I think people might switch into that. I have no doubt there'll be a, you know, I mean, you can donate to Instant Neighbour because we have the good box, which, you know, we used at the carol singing, not last Christmas, obviously it didn't happen for Christmas before, which was fantastic. So you could just tap your card and donate money. And I think that might come, but it's a difficult one. Yeah, Broad Street, absolutely.
And presumably, if appropriate, local authority will put them in your direction, if appropriate.
Yes, I mean, it depends what they're there for. And quite often that people who are out in the streets are probably in temporary. There's this whole thing about homelessness, actually. It's quite an interesting one, because you can be roofless. There's definitions of homelessness. So if you're a roofless person, that means you have no roof over your head. And there's virtually none in Aberdeen. There's maybe 1 or 2. And those are people who have made the choice that they do not want to have a roof over their head. If you're homeless, that could be somebody that has no permanent address. So you can be sofa surfing. You can be living with friends, family, but you don't have your own permanent address. So you can be regarded as homeless. And the local authority will look after you if you are unintentionally homeless, not if you're intentionally homeless. So, for instance, if you have been in a local authority property and choose not to pay your rent for a while and they chuck you out, you're intentionally homeless as far as they're concerned. So they will not assist you immediately. So it depends why you're homeless. You know, if you're fleeing domestic violence, for instance, absolutely, that kind of stuff. If your partner, who is the tenant, has stopped paying the rent and you get thrown out, they'll help you. So there's, you know, there are, but it's understanding the system. It's not that straightforward. So the local authority will go through a checklist with you about why you might be there. But if it's for food, for instance, they will direct you to. They have a comprehensive list of food banks that are open and when they're open. We update that with them all the time across. There's a Food Poverty Action Aberdeen group. It's about 40 odd groups, organisations are members of that. So we connect with each other and find out what's going on.
You also mentioned that you come in contact with people with an addiction of some sort.
Yeah.
Do you have your own unit to help these people? Or
no, we don't. There's Drug and Alcohol Action Aberdeen that we refer them to. So there's an organisation that does that. We have currently, I have at least 2 of my volunteers who are struggling with addiction, is the best way to describe it. They'll be okay for a while and then fall over the edge. And I have to say that we had a young lad that worked with us for a while who we've had to let go recently because in the last year he became addicted to alcohol. And and we've tried to help him come off that. We had an occupational health assessment done with him. We had all sorts of bits and pieces. He didn't want to participate. So we can't have somebody with that actually is working with us. And if somebody turns up quite clearly high or smelling or anything, they were not allowed in for that day. They have to go away until they come back better. But we will try and find the appropriate support mechanism for them. But, you know, as long as they're sober, clean when they come to us, they're very welcome. It's just I can't have anybody else's life put at risk because of somebody coming in. You know, that's the biggest challenge actually. But what you want to do is help them move away from that addiction. And we've been successful in lots of ways with that, a lot of people. And not just that, people with mental health issues. One of the volunteers, one of the people we have working in one of our shops had real anxiety issues, hadn't gone out of our house for almost 2 years and started slowly with us and now is running one of the shops, completely running one of the shops. So, you know, we've managed to help her transform over a period of 3 years to be feel able to be out and about again. So that's one of the things. But, you know, going back to things about Alan's thing about recognition and shouting about it and all that kind of stuff, those are the things I think that are worthwhile shouting about, but they're not interested, media are not interested in that. They want the sensational stuff. So, you know, that's a long, slow process. It's not grab the headlines type, you know. So we're not headline enough. We're just slowly, quietly working away in the background.
But in a sense, you are headlining things because the work you're doing is so wide-ranging. You know, box of what you actually are doing. Self-funding, getting grants and things, and shops and all the rest of it. You're managing really to employ a lot of people doing a fantastic job for the rest of the people in Aberdeen who really, really require it. So it is worth really shouting about yourself.
Yes, it is. And we try to a little bit, but it's difficult. We try to do a bit of that through our social media and hopefully we can get better at that. I think the whole world has become social media savvy, haven't they? But it's, again, one of the things is we do some controversial stuff, let's be honest. So I have recently re-employed somebody that was locked up for drugs dealing, but he's done his time. You know, our view as an organisation, if you have done your time, you are entitled to get back into society and start paying back. And about 8-9 years ago, maybe slightly longer than that, maybe 8-9 years ago, we were in the press for all the wrong reasons because we had somebody that had been found guilty of downloading images, you know. So we had him in the organisation because he was doing this community service with us. Nobody else would take him, but he was entitled to the opportunity to redress his behaviour again. It is that for me about what is the aim of the organisation and what are you trying to do? You're trying to help people move on. So as I say, we can be in the press at sometimes because we can be sensational, but most of the times I say this. But Instant Neighbour is about helping people address their behaviour, move on, develop something else, and give back. And you know, I'm very proud of the fact that it does it so well. It's great. I'm very lucky. I work for a very good organisation.
Well, we've always been so happy to have supported you. So now we actually realise just what exactly we are supporting by our small efforts to really keep you going and progressing. So thank you very much for your talk.
You're very welcome. I just say it's not small efforts. Honestly, it's not small efforts. Every bit of support you guys give us is fantastic. Very, very much appreciated. And I'm, you know, let's be clear, Instant Neighbour would not be here if it hadn't been for the churches in Aberdeen. So that has to be where it came from, Holborn West Church, you know, the founding members of the organisation, and we're still here 36 years later, still doing some of the great work that they set out doing. So without the support of you guys, then we wouldn't be here. So, you know, it's for me, there's a strong partnership relationship there about how well we can have and continue to work together. So I'm very grateful to you all.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to see you. Hope to see you all in person sometime soon as well.
Thank you.
And a lettings committee, Mike, at some point, eh? Take care,
Well,
everybody.
slowly starting, so we're getting inquiries. I'll be in touch.
Great, okay. Thank you.
Thanks, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much indeed, Sophie. That's been
Thank you.
great.
You're very welcome. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
To the rest of us, see you all again in 2 weeks' time. We'll be into August the 3rd, and it's another charity, Scotland's charity Air Ambulance with Jim Brand. Again, I'm sure it'll be as enlightening as Instant Neighbour has been today for us. So see you all again in 2 weeks' time. Bye for now.